nice. Very nice. Front to back. Leader's garment. Quite happy.
It's alright, isn't it? Looks pretty good in that bad boy.
Excellent. I think the word you're looking for is... Look at that thing. Looks beautiful. Done. Beautiful.
Now, only if you're ready for this.
And we're back for episode 2 of the OTB podcast. Here to punish your ears again for another week. Welcome back, Red Dog.
Thanks for having me, Kerry. Very happy to be back, and I've heard the listenership has been through the roof, which is surprising to say the least, also untrue.
Maybe next week we might make it into triple digits. Who knows?
I mean,
we'll see how we go.
I think we're a wee way off ordering the Lamborghinis just yet. But maybe by the end of the season.
We're coming at it like a diesel, you know. We'll power through. We'll still be there at the end. No better watch.
No, I like it.
We've got more to talk about this week though, so it should be it should be a bit better. Last week was just a tester, really. First on the cards though, was a question. I'm going to jump straight into this one from a great New Zealander, and I mean, he arguably maybe one of our best cross country racers ever, in my eyes, anyway. Mark Cabin Leishman. He wants to know about the Avanti Moto and its role in New Zealand downhill. Did you ever have an Avanti Moto, Red Dog?
No. Good friend of mine, Sam Horgan, he had an Avanti Moto in all its glory, but I never owned one, although I always thought they were pretty damn cool at the time.
You did have a D8 though, right? Which was the follow-up model.
You would say that the D8 was sort of the new and improved version, but quite different in execution,
different,
I guess.
Well, the Moto is probably actually a little bit before our time. So I mean, we came into the game around maybe 2001, something like that. So the Moto, I believe, was released in about 98. And I've read varying reports anywhere from 150 mil travel to 185 mil travel. And that thing had a tiny shock on it. So it would have had a horrific leverage ratio on it.
The one that I recall that Sam had, Camel, we'll refer to him as Camel from now on, that had a 1.5 inch stroke shock, and you could get 6 inches of travel out of it. And so it was like 4-1 or whatever, 4-1. And you never ran it in the 6 inch mode because it would just detonate a shock almost immediately, especially the crappy shocks back then. Yeah,
they were not that flash. If you haven't seen one, I'm gonna throw some pictures and a little bit of the history in picture up on our Instagram around the time this goes out too. There's they were a monocoque frame, and I just remember them being horrifically noisy. But there was a handful around in Nelson when I first started riding. So one of my mates, Shorty, who was one of the guys that I first started riding with, and coincidentally enough, I actually bumped into yesterday, and I hadn't seen him in about 18 years. So it was quite weird on that timing. But
did you ask him about the rig?
He knows where it is. He's trying to get it back. I did ask him about the Moto, so he's on a mission to get it back. But probably in my eyes, the most famous New Zealander that no one probably really remembers ever rode one was Kelly McGazza. He was on a Moto when I first met him, and he was still like 6'5" or whatever at that point, and that thing was tiny. And I actually have a picture of him on that bike that I'm going to put up on the Instagram as well. So yeah, McGazza was on one. I don't really remember them being a highly sought after race bike in terms of like any pro guys being on them though.
No, I mean, my first encounter with an Avanti Moto was when one of the things that first got me into mountain biking was there was this 20k loop that was ridden as a fundraiser in Palmy, and they'd shuttle you up in the army trucks, and then you'd ride like 20k's of gravel road, and it was kind of meandering across the top of the hills and then back down, and it was like a fundraiser for something. And I remember there were 2 of these as spot prizes, and this was a big event because like it was a fundraising thing, and anyone could kind of come and ride it. And that was sort of my first introduction to the Avanti Moto. And I remember looking at it and thinking like, gosh, that thing's next level. But then looking back at it now, it's actually it's kind of like halfway between a downhill bike and it's like the downhill bike version of an entry level mountain bike.
Yeah.
And I don't recall them ever being like no one really raced on them, although we'll get to that. But they weren't like a big feature in the downhill scene, I don't think.
Nah, not that I remember. They were kind of like, for lack of a better term, the poor man's downhill bike. Yeah, the entry level that people kind of bashed around on. But yeah, I remember 3 or 4 of them. I'm pretty sure I actually have a picture somewhere at Mum and Dad's house of me sending a jump at the Gravity Cross track in Nelson. I think I even had a cap on backwards because I was young and dumb. On one of those things that was someone else's bike. But I mean, we've got to dive into it. Probably the most famous person to ever ride a moto, but it arguably wasn't even an Avanti Moto. Was Nathan Rennie. Started his career on one and raced the '97 World Champs as a junior on one. But this was actually it was just this single pivot thing, and after doing some deep diving into it, it was actually I think it was an Italian bike called a Cycle Pro Octagon, and it had an Öhlins scooter shock in it.
Oh yes, I remember the Öhlins. So
Yeah,
it was
and that
from a
thing was
motorbike
huge.
of sorts.
From everything I can gather, but yeah, again, this is another one that we'll put up on the Instagram. But actually, because I know Nathan from the racing days, and I reached out to him to ask him if he had any memories of that bike, and I got a very comprehensive reply of a thumbs up. So
Good memories,
yeah,
precious memories.
I think that one really stood out to him.
But you can't
But
blame him not wanting to talk about a bike that's close to 30 years old.
Yeah, but I don't think he's got a hell of a lot going on. So I thought he might have wanted to, throw some memories in there, but not today apparently. But so within my deep dive into the depths of the internet, trying to find out any information I could on this Avanti Moto Pro / Cycle Pro Octagon. So Rennie got like 10th at World Champs as a junior in '97, and then '98 he was still on that same bike. But at Mont Saint Anne, the week of the race, it got stolen, and Cannondale lent him a bike, and he ended up 3rd in his final year as a junior on a borrowed bike. When he was meant to be on an Avanti, so that would have been the strongest Avanti result in downhill ever if his bike hadn't been stolen.
That may have been the only result in downhill for Avanti, so
pretty much.
That's pretty
But
incredible.
on looking at those results, Greg Minnaar was also there as a junior, and he's still racing. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, just today we were doing some social sort of racing locally here, and I mean, Kieran will know it as well as I do. It's certainly not as easy to go fast now as it was 15 years ago. So, I mean, Kieran's still doing it at the top. I'm certainly doing it somewhere around the mid pack to bottom these days.
The top's marginal. It depends where you're measuring the top from. But yeah, Minnaar is actually, he's the current world champion, and he's like, I don't know, is he 40 yet? He's getting damn close to it. Anyway.
I think he is 40. I think he's 40, maybe.
That's insane.
Very close.
He's very close to it anyway, if he's not. But so JK and Rankin raced that world champs in elite. I found them in the results.
Oh wow!
And then there was a man by the name of Carl Patterson, aka Weasel, racing as a junior.
I mean, he's a handful as an adult, so I can only imagine.
I feel for whoever the New Zealand team manager was that had him over there that year. But then there's a couple of guys that I've never heard of, Ashley Cameron and Glenn Reid, who raced for New Zealand as well as juniors. Don't know the names. If anyone does, hit us in the DMs and tell us, because I don't know who those guys were. And
Oh, well,
and
yeah, interesting.
arguably Nelson's fastest ever downhill racer that people probably have no idea who he is. Tim Nelson was also there as a junior.
Oh, I always assumed Tim Nelson was like in and out and didn't really have much of a junior career, but obviously it was before my time. So
Yeah, no, he was.
yeah, interesting that he kind of built it up through the junior ranks.
Yeah, no, he was definitely around as a junior coming through that area as well. But yeah, Fabian Burrell won that World Championships as a junior,
and he is long retired. So that's
yeah. Now manages.
I mean, yeah, I mean, if you relate that to Manar now, that's quite incredible.
Yeah, that's insane. But good segue anyway into the current season we're in, and we've spent 10 minutes talking about a race from 1998, when I was 11 years old and hadn't even started riding downhill. So it's good. So Lourdes coming up this weekend. I'm quite excited. It is feels like it's been quite a while since we've had a World Cup race.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and actually longer than I thought since we'd been to Lourdes. It was 2017 when we last went there.
It's been,
and we went there sort of
quite
3 in a row. So I
yeah.
was quite I didn't realize it had been that long because it seemed there for a while. It kind of cemented itself as a bit of an opener to the series, and then obviously it's been away. Yeah, been away 5 years, so it's good to have it back.
But then it was actually only 3 years as well. It seemed like it had been around for a while, but there was 3 seasons, and then 2017 has been quite a gap. Jumping back into 2017, do you remember what the big headline was that weekend?
Are you railroading me into chat about 29ers in Santa Cruz?
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, later in the season, I'd like to talk about, when we go to Val de Sol, I'd like to talk about what happened.
We'll save that one. Save that one for Val de Sol. We might have some technical difficulties around that point, but we'll see how we go.
But you're right. It was the big 29er unveiling. It was kind of the start of it, really, wasn't it?
It was. That was the first, because there definitely was none the season before, and then I remember Santa Cruz were top secret on that thing, and that didn't get rolled out until that race, which was actually quite cool that they'd developed. Well, not developed, but they'd kind of redeveloped their 27.5 pretty extensively to work for the 29. They'd worked with Maxxis. You couldn't even get a downhill tire. In 29 at that point. So they'd worked with Maxxis, got downhill tyres. Fox had built them the 49 downhill fork. And then, everyone scrambled after that. And I remember Fort William, there was all these bikes turning up that were like 27.5s that had been converted and kind of weren't that good, but was quite a, broke the internet for a few days, that one.
Just a quick question on that. Did anyone go straight to a mullet bike at that point?
No, I don't think that had even been thought about at that point. I feel like they're only maybe, I don't know. Or actually, do you know who, now that I think about it, the first people that I remember kind of being on mullet bikes was Eddie Masters' Bergamont team, because I don't think they could get 29-inch bikes, but they were running a Manitou Dorado, which you could put a 29-inch front wheel in, no problem.
Oh, right. So
And
maybe they were the trendsetters.
Yeah, I think they just threw a 29er straight in the front. Now that now that I look back on that one, that was the only option they really had.
Once again, New Zealand leading from the front, Eddie the Eagle Masters, changing the game.
That last race at Lourdes, that was kind of one to forget about. It was
Oh,
That
I disagree, and anyone who says there's an asterisk against that result is.
hang on. I'm pretty sure you said there was an asterisk in the last episode when I mentioned Alex Fail.
I've said it once and I'll say it again. If I win a World Cup downhill, I don't care if bears ate the rest of the competition. I don't care if there was a nuclear holocaust uh, and wipes everyone out but me somehow because I've got like some form of suit on. I am telling everyone that I won a World Cup and I'm never repeating the circumstances.
I'm right there with you. I'll probably get a tattoo somewhere to railroad the
Absolutely.
point home. Why not? Maybe on my
Absolutely.
forehead just so everyone sees it.
Yes. But yeah,
Um,
you're right. Alex Fail won due to the rain and seemingly, I think this is the earliest we've ever been to Lourdes in terms of schedule. So
yeah, this is
I know the
a month
squids
earlier.
were quite vocal about it being maybe marginal on the weather front.
Yeah, I've just actually just opened up AccuWeather right here as we discussed. Friday has a 62% chance of rain. Saturday, we've lost it now. Saturday 55 and Sunday 56. So could be a bit on the wet side.
I mean, and
As long
that's
as
not a
everyone's
bad thing
racing
so
anyway.
long as yeah. So yeah,
That
it
was
depends on the timing and how
that was
much.
that was the problem last time in 2017. Is it rained midway through the race, and that place looked like ice for those top guys. I watched some of the runs just this last week just to kind of, from what I could find of it, you can't watch the replay anymore, but yeah, watching like the last few guys down, like Lourdes at the end, man, it looked horrific. But then once they got in the trees, it wasn't bad, but all the stuff out in the open was deadly for sure. But yeah, that was a month later than we're visiting it now.
So I guess going into previous winners there, Kieran, you sort of you've actually put money on it. The fact that Gwyn won't make a top five this season, of which I'm going to take your money. But if we're looking at past winners, he's won 2 out of the 3, and the third was sort of was rain affected. So do you have any comments here? Do you want to pay up sort of now,
Pay it
or
forward,
do
you
you want to
reckon?
see what happens?
Well, nah, because I'm still pretty confident on this bet. When was the last World Cup that Gwyn won? Riddle me that. Has he won a World Cup on intense? I'm pretty sure that's a
No,
no.
no, he hasn't. I don't even know if he's actually podiumed a World Cup on the intense. He was injured for quite a while. The intense sort of era hasn't been his shining star, I guess.
No, it hasn't been the
I believe he
strongest.
won at Lords on the YT in the first outing.
I think you're right, actually. But
So
yeah, I don't know.
uh,
Maybe Gwyn's been left behind. Maybe these other guys are too fast for him.
well, they've got their new bike, so let's just see, eh?
Yeah, that's a discussion that we'll jump into. But one thing I
TikTok.
just thought I'd touch on coming into the first round was injuries, or if anyone's missing, and probably the highest profile is your guy Troy Brosnan.
Oh, that is my guy. I'm a huge Brosnan fan, and just
Who isn't
gutted to
though?
see him out. Gutted to see him out. Ever since he was wearing those super cool specialized kits when they were making kits for him, gear for him, and every week he'd have some cool gear. Ever since then, huge fan, and my wife also a massive fan of Troy. She's
What about
essentially said that's it. She's not watching if Troy's not around.
bigger fan, Pip, Sam Hill or Troy Brosnan? Who does she like more? Or will Troy take over from
It's
Hill?
no. Troy just took over. I think Hill's sort of like he's still the benchmark.
Yeah.
It's a sort of different love between the two. I think Hill's
Is
still number one. I think.
Hill God and is Brosnan Jesus?
I'd say Hill's Jesus, and like Brosnan's like one of the disciples.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So he's at the table for the last
yeah,
supper.
yeah. He's at the table. Yeah,
Basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like Jesus
Okay.
is sort of making the water into wine. Brosnan's sort of, I don't know, drinking it, I guess.
Well, I mean, we do commonly refer to as Hill as Jesus on a downhill bike, so that makes a lot of sense.
And prove us
It's,
wrong. Prove us wrong.
yeah, yeah. If you can prove us wrong, I don't know. We'll eat our hats, but we don't have hats on, so we're fine there. So yeah, he broke his ankle at national champs in Australia, so that was a rough one for Troy because yeah, I mean he's been Mr. Consistency for so many seasons, and who knows, this could have been the year.
Yeah, and he came out firing last year, didn't he, at Leogang for that win?
Yeah, first of the season, opened up the season with a win.
So yeah, it is disappointing, but it looked like a high speed sort of get off.
Yeah,
So
it's pretty rough
so
looking.
he probably got off kind of lightly.
And then
But yeah,
I haven't found out for sure, but I think unfortunately Tahoto Ricky Penny from New Zealand, our guy on his first year on Mondraker, won't be racing. He broke some ribs and punctured a lung at one of the preseason events. So I think he's still off the bike at the moment, which is a bummer to see him miss the first round. But maybe he's just kind of hanging out, waiting for it. I'm not too sure.
yeah, it's disappointing because he's been he's been in good form, hasn't he, leading up?
Yeah, he's been strong in New Zealand, and he looks pretty good on that. Looks pretty good on the Mondraker. I hate to say it because after he left us at Santa Cruz, but yeah, on to bigger things for him.
BBD.
Then there's no one else that I can really think of off the top of my head that is coming in. Matt Walker, Kiwi Matt Walker. He got pretty beaten up in December. I'm not sure how much downhill he was actually racing this season, but he broke something in his back, lacerated his liver, almost lost his pancreas, and then he's actually just had shoulder surgery a few weeks ago as well. So he won't be there, but I think he's aiming to still be back for the first AWS round.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he's had a long road to recover there, so it'll be good if he, can get back by that first EWS round. I guess just while we're on the topic of pivot riders, Eddie, is he fit and healthy?
Yeah, the Eagle's back. He's there. He'll be at Lourdes, so it'll be good to see him back. He raced national champs, so he was back for that. Had a similar race run to me there. Rolled around on the ground, and I think we were right next to each other in the results down at the bottom of the page. But he's an animal. He'll be fit and strong, I'm sure. And actually, another segue pivot that I forgot to bring up before. Do you remember who got 6th place at Lourdes in 2017?
Stingray Chapman.
Yes, great work on that one.
Oh,
One of our loyal listeners.
Stingray, I hope you go around telling people that you once got 6th at a World Cup and say absolutely nothing about the circumstances.
No.
Didn't he have a really good result at Cairns one year?
Yeah, he was like pretty close to the podium, I think, at Cairns as well.
Was that
a few sneaky good results?
Yeah, one of my favourite downhillers to ever come out of Canterbury, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Especially because he raced in Dickies in a t-shirt for so long.
Incredible stuff.
New bikes. We already kind of touched on Gwyn and the new Intense, but what do you think of that thing? It's quite a departure for them.
It's a massive departure. I mean, everyone's jumping on the high pivot, idler setup, and without having ridden one, it's really hard to tell if everyone's just doing it because, it's the thing to do, or if there is actually gains there. You'd expect with the amount of, data and things they can collect these days that it is the right way forward. And heck, there's enough of them.
It's incredible how many brands have jumped on that, though.
Yeah, and the interesting thing
it's
is
nuts,
that
actually.
it's not new. Like the
No,
companies
it's been
have
around for a
done
long
all
time.
this before, so yeah, it's it's certainly an interesting one.
Yeah, that intense, that I don't know, that's got a hell of a rocker arm on it. Kind of looks
Oh
like they
yeah,
tried to copy a Trek, but make it a bit different just for the sake of it. And yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Um, I hear there might be a new bike from GT coming, so I don't know whether that will debut here or maybe later in the season. So keep an eye out on that one as well.
yeah, that'll be interesting too. Whether they stick with the same format that they've had, or they switch it up. I mean, at the moment they've got a sort of high pivot setup, I believe, or sort of
Kind of looks like all the others: high pivot,
yeah,
idler,
yeah.
semi
It's
high
not
pivot.
super high, but so it'll be interesting. Oh yeah, see what they come up with.
It looks like the Commensal is kind of same. Speaking of high pivots with idlers, but it looks a little bit more refined. Like maybe that's going into production mode sort of thing now.
Yeah, it does look very refined. Um, so yeah, although at the time when they made that, they said they had no plans for it to enter production, but it certainly looks like it's going to. So
Yeah.
um,
Speaking of Commensal, I'd kind of seen that video that they put out, but I'd flashed over it because it was like over an hour and you had to watch it in subtitles and it was all black and white. But holy shit, those guys are 100% committed to racing. That whole company, it's pretty impressive.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if anyone's dumping the amount of resource into racing that those guys are. So
They
pretty
they have
cool, and
like their
especially
own private test track and
yeah,
facility where
that
they go
facility.
and
Yeah,
like set up and work on their bikes and test and everything. It's insane. It's 40 minutes from their headquarters. If you haven't watched it, it's worth a watch. You do have to read the subtitles, but it's pretty good watching actually.
yeah, it is quite good. Um, you'd almost say that in terms of like bike design, ever since they released the sort of high pivot and or the previous model of the Supreme, and they had so much success on it, everyone's kind of looked to them for the next thing a little bit. So this new bike is whilst it's a departure, it still sort of runs along the same philosophy. Um, it will be interesting to see whether other companies sort of look elsewhere as well, or they stick with sort of these new high pivot idler situations.
Yeah. On the high pivot, Conor Fearon departed Kona after oh my pretty much his whole career and went to Forbidden, which apparently got a downhill bike coming, but he was the Australian national champ this year on the Forbidden trail bike, but basically just put into kind of downhill mode. Um, how pissed off is Caleb Smith right now?
He's ropeable, I think. He's a long time kind of fearing guy. And for him to win a national title not on a Kona, Caleb just must be spewing.
Caleb should have done better.
I mean,
Then
we've told him for a while, he needs to be better, but
yeah, it's
apparently
time.
not.
Other New Zealand championship news. New Zealand champs George Brannigan. He left Propane after a few years and joined the United Ride team on NS, and he's been looking real good this season in New Zealand. He's had a couple like flat tire and a little bit of shit luck, but yeah, he took out national champs pretty convincingly. So I'm excited to see how George goes this season.
Yeah. I mean, when he moved from Propane to the UR team, I asked a few people at the time. I was like, "Is this?" Because I wasn't sure. I was like, "Is this a step down? Is it a step sideways and a step up?" And I think you'd almost say now, in terms of the kit he's got and the way he's riding, I think it's a step up.
Yeah, I
He
mean
looks good on the bike.
We sort of discussed that a bit. He went from Schwalbe, which I mean, arguably a pretty decent tire, to Kenda, which have never had a great reputation. And then from SRAM and RockShox over to SR Sun Tour for suspension. But no, he genuinely seems pretty happy on the setup. His suspension and everything feels pretty dialed. It looks pretty dialed, so he could be on for hopefully on for a good season.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, he's certainly got the skills, and he's always had the skill. You just hope, and I guess it's positive to see him win national champs.
He's not afraid to send it. He'll send some
Yeah,
big gaps before anyone else does. That's for sure.
no, he's not afraid. If you want to see an outstanding run, his run in Wyndham,
the worst
when he
and
was-
best run in World Cup history.
yeah, I mean he was absolutely flying until the wheels just fell off completely.
Multiple times. So Loris, Vergia, and Emery Perron won a couple of the last two preseason races. So I mean, it's pretty natural to see those two riding pretty strong. So again, I'm sure we'll see them at the top a bit.
Yeah, definitely.
What about team changes? There's been a few changes around the place. Like we talked about Tohoto going to Mondraker, who was also joined there by David Trimmer, who left the YT mob that dissolved this year. Seems that YT basically just pulled out of racing. What else has happened?
I mean, the floor is yours if you want to talk about the Santa Cruz Syndicate and the big changes there.
That's definitely on my notes. That's probably one of the biggest ones of the season in terms of change ups. Laurie Greenland joining with Jackson Goldstone. So you guys remember Strider sensation Jackson Goldstone, who was back in his last year as a junior this year, and Nina Hoffman also joining the syndicate. So that was a pretty big change. But then that also saw Luca Shaw moving to Canyon alongside Troy and Mark Wallace.
Yeah, I mean, big changes all around there. Lucas Shaw, obviously, if you remember, I think it was that first year on the syndicate, he was poised to win multiple times, and it just didn't come together. And then riddled with injuries here and there, and I think the change is probably quite good for him in terms of going to Canyon, a little bit of a shake-up in terms of program, different kit.
Just a full reset.
Yeah, and I think guys sometimes need that. It's.
I mean, if you're a Supercross fan, could be a bit like Tomac to Yamaha, big
could
shake
be.
up. Just a new new surroundings. Anderson to Kawasaki. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he goes.
Yeah, it certainly will be. You'd think with the strength of that program too. I mean, he's not gone from the syndicate to sort of a second or third tier team. He's still at the elite level. Canyon, what would you say are the top three? Santa Cruz, Canyon, and Commensal in terms of
teams,
elite teams.
Yeah, it'd be pretty hard to argue those three. I'm sure there's some others in there. I mean, Mondraker have a pretty professional setup as well, but yeah, I mean, you look at the heritage of those, like Syndicate with kind of Petey as a coach, Canyon with Burrell there, and I mean, just obviously all the resources that Commensal are throwing at races as well. So that's
and Max Commensal, who's been in racing since the beginning of time.
How many world championships does that guy have to his name in terms of like Sun, and Commensal and everything? So yeah, pretty legitimate there.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's a big move.
2021. How many different winners do you reckon there were off the top of your head? Out of 6 rounds.
I'm going to say, out of 6 rounds?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 5.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember at one point there being, during the season, thinking we haven't had a repeat winner yet.
Yeah, so Virgil Loris was the only repeat winner all season. So it went Brosnan at round 1, Thibaut Deprel at round 2, Loris, and then at Snowshoe, Reese Wilson won the first round, and Loic came in clutch to win the final round and take the title after Deprella and Loris seemingly just didn't want it anymore and basically threw it away at Snowshoe.
Arguably, Deprella's wheel threw it away.
Yeah, definitely threw it away from him. But yeah, Loic actually started the season 10th at the first round, so he had a pretty rough start. But
he often starts slow, and he kind of builds. It'd be interesting if he actually went back through the years and saw where where he started.
It's consistent though, like even a 10th, you say a bad start, but hell, I mean, I'd take a 10th any day of the week at a World Cup. But for him,
it's not last.
For him, he's generally a guy that could win any race basically.
Yeah. But then he's strong all season. He doesn't have a big peak and a taper. He sort of builds to the point where it's almost like he comes in 90% there and then uses the start of the season to build that fast pace that he then holds.
He generally doesn't have bad races either.
No.
I can't think of too many that he's had, flat tires or huge crashes or anything like that. So he's pretty consistent and strong.
I mean, to bring it back, in 2016, speaking of Lourdes, he was the one who was going to take it away from Gwyn and crashed sort of right in the last section of the track almost.
That's right, I remember that now.
Which I believe would have been, I might be lying here, would it have been his first win?
Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story.
No, I won't.
Probably would have been, because that would have been pretty early on, because he had a couple of years where he won world champs but didn't win a World Cup. Took him a little bit before he won a World Cup for.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a guy that's got 5 world championships to his name and 2 World Cup overalls. It's pretty impressive.
5 world championships is incredible at this point in his career.
It's insane, because he's still, he's not that old either. So it's pretty impressive. No. So going into Lourdes, Blinky, Sam Blenkinsop, he's going to miss Lourdes. I think he just decided that, I guess probably at the point of deciding, because it's such a big gap through to the next round, he probably didn't want to stay in Europe for 7 weeks or whatever it is. And at that point in time, he would have had to have come back and done 2 weeks in MIQ New Zealand. So he decided not to go and race, but he'll be back for the rest of the rounds. All the other usual suspects are pretty much there. Brooke McDonald, Eddie, Win Masters, George Brannigan, which, I was looking at this, all of those guys are 30 at least, or older. It's pretty impressive.
Wow.
We've got a pretty old level of talent in our elite field.
Just in general, do you think that the elite talent in the sport is getting, the average age is getting older, or do you think that it's a young person's sport still? There was always that sort of like, the young guys coming through, they're the ones to challenge, but you've just rattled off a list of names there, and they're all in their 30s.
In New Zealand, it's been a while. Like, George is kind of the last guy that we had through until Tahoto broke through. That was quite a while. I think George raced Worlds as a junior in 2010. So we kind of had almost like a 10-year hiatus of any real fast talent coming through. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like, you saw a guy like Thibaut Deprella, who was absolutely on fire last year, straight out of juniors. But it's pretty few and far between that guys come out and with that level of talent. That's your guys like Loic, Loris, that usually come through and do that sort of thing. I think it's a real mix, but I think longevity is coming through more and more these days. I think guys are sticking around longer and are kind of able to make a bit longer career out of it, maybe.
Yeah, and it almost seems like if you've endured one change in terms of like, well, we'll say when Sam Hill came in and things kind of changed. Everyone says he changed the sport, but a lot of things with bikes changed. Longer front ends and wider bars and all that sort of stuff. Flat pedals became really popular, and it's almost as if you endure one cycle of changes, then you can endure the rest. So you seem to be able to
Yeah.
adapt to change quite quickly, and some guys grasp that, and some guys seemingly don't as well, or don't do it as quickly. So when a guy like Minar, he's been changing with almost
He's got through it
the
all.
wind, then it's no surprise that when he was leading almost the 29er charge, but things change along the way. His competition changes, the bikes change, technology changes.
Yeah,
He's still
yeah,
there.
for sure. He's been through the years of when dudes just drank a lot of beer, didn't train a whole lot, and then he endured the Aaron Gwynn coming in and kind of changing it in terms of training, becoming a lot bigger thing. Or actually, argue probably more G Atherton. I think he was probably one of the early guys that really pushed it like that. But
Mm.
yeah, it's definitely there's a few of them that are still sticking it out.
Speaking of G Atherton, is he back?
I think so. I'd like to see him back. He definitely hasn't been the G Atherton of old, but it'll be pretty cool to see him still out there battling.
Yeah, I'd like to see him back too. And I'd like to see, I mean, in
Rachel,
their
I think, will
final.
be back, hopefully.
Yeah, that would be even cooler. I was just going to say, even in their final year, I'd like to see Red Bull utilize G a little bit more in terms of like his trackside knowledge, because he's done a bit of stuff in the past for them on the broadcast,
Hmm.
and he's really insightful. He knows a heck of a lot, and always interesting to listen to.
I always really liked the Atherton project and those videos and that. They were always a pretty intriguing family. Like, I don't think you'll never find a family again that all of them win a World Cup in the same weekend. Like at
Yeah,
Andorra when G and Rachel won downhill and Dan won four cross. That's pretty insane. But
yeah, absolutely
yeah,
incredible.
they've all had a pretty impressive career. But hopefully when they do step out the Atherton kind of racing keeps going with the bikes and everything and them involved.
Yeah,
Um, if Rachel does come back, and it kind of sounds like she might be, I haven't been able to find a start list. I had a look around tonight, but there's no start list out from what I can see. Do you reckon she can still win?
absolutely, absolutely. I I don't know if she would come back on the money first race, because I think that would be very, very difficult to do. Um, but I absolutely think she can win.
Yeah, I
Um,
wouldn't. I wouldn't bet against her winning a World Cup for
she's
sure.
won so many that you'd be a fool to count her out. I think
She
she's
had a perfect season. Like, come
yeah.
on,
I mean,
mate.
Next to Anne Caro, I don't I don't know if there isn't another rider that's won as much as she has. So
I'm not big on the stats, but is Anne Caro still the most winning World Cup rider? I think Rachel was close,
mm,
but I don't know if she passed her.
yeah, I can't remember. It was very, very close, almost to the point where it doesn't really matter. They both won so many World Cup races that
It's
they're in a
insane.
class of their own.
It's the women's field. I kind of it's hard to put like a favorite on it or a standout on it. There's Miriam Nicole, Valley Hole, Camille Balanche, Rachel if she comes back, Nina Hoffman, Monica Resnick. Man, there's so many fast girls in there at the moment that you kind of it's hard to really say where they'll stack up.
It really is. Yeah, it is difficult to to see how they'll stack up. I think you're still. I think there's still pretty evident that there's those sort of top echelon girls.
Yeah,
Valley, obviously, Miriam. Um, I'd say they're the top two. Tani is a little bit of a wild card just because she's been injured. She's been injured quite a bit recently, and there's flashes there, absolutely. But it'll be interesting just to see if hopefully she's had a good off season. I mean, we can see how she stacks up because at her peak, she is more than capable of competing with them.
We can work with speed.
We can.
We got Jess Blewett on the factory GT team this year under the tutelage of Horse at Cam Cole MTB. I reckon she could get on the podium this year. I could see her coming out and getting in the top 5.
What was her best result last year? Was it like 7th or something like that?
Yeah, it was getting pretty close. Like she was getting pretty close, and she's back on the bike and everything. Like she had that pretty horrendous crash at the last round in snowshoe, and was pretty badly injured. But yeah, she won national champs pretty handily here, and will be back for Lourdes. So hopefully she goes good.
Yeah, good to see that good to see her back because that was a horrific crash. At the end
bad.
of last year. So it's good to see she's turned it around, and winning national champs certainly doesn't hurt.
And then Jenna Hastings joined the pivot team alongside Eddie with Bernard Kerr in that. She had a real strong Crankworks, came out, won Crankworks and won a whole bunch of that stuff, and she's been riding pretty strong this year. So it'll be interesting to see how she goes in the juniors this year, especially with that support there.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be pretty cool. It'll be interesting. It seems like we've got some strong contenders this year from New Zealand. So
yeah, and
should be good.
Jumping into the juniors, obviously Lockie Stevens McNabb, he joined the Santa Cruz Union team. And what I'm actually looking forward to, and I think could quite happen, will be the Syndicate versus Union showdown of Jackson Goldstone versus Lockie, because holy shit, Lockie was flying this season here in New Zealand in the national rounds. Like he was, I think he was third fastest at national champs behind George and Tohoto. He's just been absolutely hauling. So he will be a real strong contender, I think, in the juniors.
Yeah, definitely. I guess whenever there's a young, junior kid coming up, you're always like, oh, they can't be as good as the juniors were in my day. But when you look at what the results he's producing and the times he's putting down, he's every bit as good as a top junior previously. So that'd be.
Yeah.
I never actually thought of that in terms of a showdown between those two guys, but that's one to watch.
Yeah, it could be pretty good. Hopefully he carries that form on, because I mean, like you say, back in our day, but even like when I was racing with Cam Cole and Blinky as juniors, and we were winning juniors, but we'd be lucky to break in, very deep into the top 10 in the pro field, at a national round. So he's definitely got some serious pace on with the guys he's competing, with guys he's been putting times down similar to.
Oh yeah. It's that's an interesting development. It'd be a good one to watch.
But then you never know. There's always these French kids or something that you've never heard of that come out, absolutely flying. So watch this space. It'll be good to see how Lourdes goes.
Oh, I mean, we've always talked about when you go to like an Italian Cup or something, and there's the guy there who you've later actually identified the name, but there's a guy there. He's got a white golf ball helmet. He's in the worst kit you've ever seen. He's on a bike you've never heard of, and it looks awful. And somehow he absolutely destroys you.
It's demoralizing.
So there's no surprise that there's European juniors just come out of the woodwork every year. We never hear of.
They've got some, obviously they've got the population as well. So there's, a lot of fast guys that come out from over there. Well, I don't know if I've got too much more on World Cup chat, really. Minar's 40 years old, coming into his 35th season of racing World Cup. So it's interesting to see how he goes. Big switch out of O'Neill this year to Fox.
Oh, huge switch out. One that would be dear to your heart as well, Kieran.
I'm a Troy Lee guy. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. Yep. No, I guess as with any year, there's some excitement, coming in. See who's going to be on top. I guess. Do you want to go forward with some predictions here? Do you want to pick a top three or?
For Lourdes, a top three. Man, here's a prediction: the top three is French.
I mean, you can almost can't argue against it.
It'd be pretty hard to argue against it. I mean, if I was going to throw three names at it, I'm going to say Loic, Loris, and Emery Perron. But in no given order.
Okay. No, okay. You can't argue. You can't argue with that. I think Amory's going to be tough to beat, so he's in my top three. I think Loic might be just outside, but that's just based on previous history. I'm going to say Tebow's in there as well. Loris will be just outside the top three. Or yeah, it's a difficult one. Let's say someone like Laurie Greenland really has a heater, which I know is going to be music to your ears, Kieran.
Oh yeah, I can get on board with that one. I can definitely get on board with that one. Well, I've written those predictions.
Menard not in your top three though.
I love Menard, but also I think a bit of a diesel. He might come in a little bit off in the first round and pick it up from there.
Slow burn.
Yeah, slow burn. We've got Will Chance to look forward to. We've got a rainbow jersey to retain.
What about the women?
Miriam Nicole. Hard for me to argue. Well, I don't really have a lot that I'd put in front of her. Valley. Man. I don't know. I'm blanking on this one as well. Maybe I'm gonna go Camille Balanche.
I'm gonna go Miriam Valley, and I'm gonna say Tani. I think. Well, I hope she's back in terms of being on pace, because I think the women's field is better when there's more contenders for that win, of which I think there's more than there ever has been before. But that's my picks.
She's a winning contender for sure, so I can definitely agree with that. Yeah, so we're kind of similar on a couple of those. So
I think we're
see how it plays out.
Pretty similar. It's very, very difficult. I mean, within the top 10, especially for the guys, you've got Reece Wilson, who's obviously won last year. That's a contender. Yeah. More outside chances, like Gwyn. You just don't really know what you're going to get there, do you?
You've got guys like Benoit Coulanges that you forget about, and he podiumed at the first round last year.
Oh, you forget every time. But every time he puts out a result, and he's stuck with his program. Seems comfortable. He's fast, and he's all limbs. I mean, what can you argue with?
He is a giant man, that's for sure. Well, I think that's us coming into Lourdes. Apparently, we had some voicemails. We had some listener questions via voicemail over the week. Now, if you want to leave us a voicemail, you can actually jump into our Instagram link in bio and jump into that link tree, and you'll see there's a leave us a voice message option in there. So do feel free to get on. Leave us a wee voice message, throw us some questions. We'll read the best of the. We'll listen to the best of the best there was and respond to those. On the next episode.
And they don't have to be racing related. They can be bike related. They can be not bike related.
They could be a would you rather.
They could be.
We'll take anything.
They could
We
be.
love the
And I know
listeners.
that'll make one of our listeners very happy because he's a huge fan of Would You Rathers.
Yes, very much.
Should
I
we,
believe he might
should
have
we
already
fire
left
into
us a
them?
message. So let's see what we've got there.
He has. I'm going to have to... So just to stay on brand with the jankiness of this, we're using a Bluetooth speaker into a microphone here. So you're going to have to bear with us. Kieran, tell me if this is terrible audio.
Yeah, g'day guys. First time
It's
caller.
pretty quiet.
There
we go.
Hey, I've got a question here for James. You've raced some fantastic bikes over the years. I mean, I can think back to an Avanti D8, an Espresso, just to name a few. If you could have any of your old bikes back again, which one would it be and why? Presuming that you would probably have to re-weld most of them, check their headsets, their crank bolts, those sort of things, the normal things that used to go wrong with you on a race day. And the question doesn't even need to be asked for Kieran. I know the answer. 2002, the Specialized that he rode would clearly be his favourite, as it was one of his best seasons we've ever seen. But yeah, James, I'd really like you to answer that question. Thanks. Bye.
I mean, this anonymous caller, he's not wrong. If I could get my hands on another one of those Specialized FSRs, I'd take it today. You know, that piloted me to the prestigious Most Improved Junior award that year. I can't remember who it was that maybe kind of got bumped out from that one, but yeah, great.
Yeah, I hear that guys making anonymous calls to online internet podcasts these days.
What bike would you?
Well, firstly, question for you, Kieran. 2022, Kieran Bennett. How much does he hate 2002 Kieran Bennett for painting that Specialized Team DH orange? What were you thinking?
If I could time travel 20 years, I would punch my 13 or 14-year-old self in the face. That frame had cracked quite severely. Did have an additional quite horrific gusset welded onto the top of it. And yeah, don't know why I chose orange, but fuck, I ruined that bike, didn't I?
Oh, it's blasphemy, and it's unacceptable.
That frame would be worth, correct or not, probably still be worth a ton of money right now. I wonder where it is.
But it would have to be in the original livery. I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think you're getting the money if it's in orange.
Oh no, not at all.
For me, I mean, the anonymous caller, he alluded to a few absolute winners. The Espresso, less said about that, the better. The Avanti D8, that used to go through linkage bolts like nobody's business. And I actually, in Auckland, jumping a big, at a national year, jumping the triple at, I'd put a...
Oh, Hunua.
At Hanua, I'd put a like just a normal mild steel bolt through it, and it snapped, and then the thing came in half.
Was it on the takeoff or the landing?
I was on the landing, so that's out as well. Unfortunately, bike that I would most like back, and Kieran's going to love this, is in 2009 I had a Santa Cruz V10. And that thing was awesome. We raced it in the States, as Kieran said last week. I think he had some tuning done, or maybe it was on this podcast, by the Fox guys in the States, and they did a similar thing when I was there, and the shock in it was awesome. Unfortunately, it had done a season of racing. I had it in Whistler, and in the Garbo zone. The rear axle kept backing out, and it backed out, and I landed a jump, and it like spread the rear end on it out to like 160. But we just ran it back together, and that was all good.
Just push it back together and get the threads in, and
yeah, she was all right. And then also I ripped the ISCG tabs off it. I don't know why, but they were
chain guides back then.
Yeah, chain guides were. Yeah, they were getting broken a lot. And I remember breaking them off, and then I had to put like an adapter on to run a chain guide. And when I got home, I sold that frame, and it went through a few people, and I eventually saw it again. I think at Mount Hutt, and I said, I reckon that's my bike to the guy, and he was like, oh yeah, I bought it off such and such, and I was like, oh yeah, I think that's who I sold it to. And I was like, did it have ICG mounts? And I looked at it, and they were gone. And he said, yeah, no, they didn't weld them on at the factory. For some reason, it just didn't get them. And I said, no, mate, it definitely had
tell
them.
you a story.
They're on the side of the track at Wyndham. So yeah, that's the one I would definitely have back.
That's brilliant.
We'll go. Well, we've only got 2 voicemails, but we'll go to the next one, eh?
Yeah, go on. We're still here.
Sorry,
we're just experiencing technical difficulties.
We're buffering here. We're buffering.
How's your Wi-Fi? It's probably getting blown out by this podcast recording right now.
Here we go.
Yeah, g'day, mates. Brad Cummins coming at you here from Fresno in California. I drive a Mustang and am a first-time caller, first-time listener, in fact, as well. But my question is, I'd like to propose a hypothetical situation to the both of you. If you're at a World Cup and each racer had to drink 6 beers within the hour before they start, who would go the fastest and win the World Cup? And who would we see have the biggest percentage increase from their sober performance? I hope that makes sense. Nothing to do with how fast they can drink the beers, just that kind of who can go the fastest of a 6 beer buzz at a World Cup. Would be great to know your thoughts, see some analysis, and see where you take this. Thanks, mates.
He doesn't sound familiar at all, that guy. I don't know how he got the link. No idea.
Yeah. He does sound kind of like a guy that's on Pink Bike every now and then, though. I've seen him on a couple of videos on there, I think. But
Nah.
Yeah, don't know.
He may. I think maybe the Pink Bike guy is actually modelling what he's doing on Brad Cummins from Fresno.
Right. Maybe this guy also calls into Pink Bike. I'm not sure. Maybe he comments on Pink Bike. Sounds like he probably does.
Probably does. Yeah, he does sound like he comments on Pink Bike.
That's a great question, though, Brad Cummins. And one that I don't know off the top of my head. It would be you'd love to see it. You'd love to see where everyone would go.
I'm going to put forward a few names here, and you just pick them up or put them down. Eddie Masters. Reason being, university degree. He did 3 years in Dunedin. He can certainly handle his piss, and I think
you cut out a little bit there.
I think 6 beers is going to be nothing for him.
I think
it's just going to sharpen him up.
To university in Dunedin.
Yeah, sorry. University in Dunedin.
I could get on board with that. I think, especially still living at the zoo in Queenstown, I think he probably is still pretty familiar with a 6-pack.
Who else would I think?
I
reckon Emery's probably got.
Do you reckon? Maybe if he had a couple of darts while he was having them as well, I reckon that'd help.
Yeah, maybe a bit of lung candy would get him going. Yeah, I think so too. What about like guys like Phil Atwell?
Yeah, I mean that's probably just par for the course. Maybe Cam Cole. Maybe we get Cam Cole back on a downhill bike and get him involved in this race too.
I think Cam Cole could do serious work on 6 beers, although he'd be probably on the long whites or something these days.
Yeah, there's a lot of gluten.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't know. He might suffer
he'd probably get a sore gut.
Indigestion or something. Yeah, something would happen there. So he might be out. If we're talking past races, we started the show with him. Can we end it? Nathan Rennie.
Oh, I mean, it would just be a given. He would be your champion for sure. I mean, 6 beers would be nothing. You wouldn't even have a buzz on.
No.
There was the famous story where he talked about, I think it was in the Vital podcast, him and Kavarik spent something like 60 days just drinking every day in the off season. Then they realized the World Cup was a month away and they better start training.
60 days. It was 2 months.
It was something horrific like that.
What about yourself, Kieran? Do you think if you drank 6 beers, and let's just say they're low standard alcohol beers, we're not talking craft beers, just normal beers, Spates, if you will. I know you're a huge fan. 6 beers, how are you going? Better or worse?
Well, if you think back to our trip to Queenstown recently and those maybe 4 Spates I had with dinner and I had a hangover the next day, it's not looking good, is it?
No, it's looking poor for you.
Very weak.
The Brad Cummins, I feel like he would be fine. He's from Fresno. He seemed entrenched in that Cali lifestyle. He's probably drinking, I don't know, Coors Lights.
He'll be on Coors Lights or something.
Yeah,
Natty Lights.
He would be fine. I think he would, if anything, he's going to get just more hydrated.
You know where I could perform is maybe if you gave me a 6-pack of vodka cruisers, raspberry especially.
And you think you'd get? I think you'd vomit red.
It's been done before.
Well, thank you, Brad. That was a really good question, and keep them coming. And I hope things are well for you there in Fresno.
Yeah, do you think he was part of Fresno Smooth?
I would understand. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He probably knows Fro.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great way to finish up the second episode of the OTB podcast. If you've made it through an entire hour today, and some, congratulations. Thank you. Leave us a 5-star rating, because then people can actually find the podcast. Like it, share it, tell your friends how great this is. We'll be coming at you with more. We'll have a review next week after the race, and then we'll probably just find some shit to talk about for a few weeks in between, because we've got a bit of a gap. Thanks for your time again today, Red Dog. Again, jump on Instagram. You can find that voicemail link in there. Leave us a message, and maybe you'll get on the next show. But thanks again, Red Dog, and any final departing words?
No, thank you. Leave us a voicemail or slide into KB's DMs. The OTB podcast DMs.
Actually, if you've made it this far, sorry to interrupt you, I just remembered something and I forgot to tell you about this. I actually made a fantasy league for the podcast on the Pink Bike Fantasy Downhill League.
Oh, great!
So there is a league on there called the OTB Pod. Password is OTB Racing. That's OTB Racing, all one word. If you want to join, get in there. We might even have some prizes for some podiums or overalls at the end of the season. But it'd be great if you guys joined us and got in there. I'll put that in the link in the bio too. So come have some fun.
What would we have as prizes? Like, are we just going to go through like our parts bins and just pick out something random? Because I've got some real old crap there. Like, if you want like a front derailleur, XT front derailleur, is that a prize?
Yeah, I've got an EXO front shifter that someone could probably have. I mean, we could really send them a nice care package probably.
Oh yeah, I like this idea. Actually, it'd be a nice clear out. Great prizes.
Great way to make some space in the garage. I've got a giant tiger in my garage at the moment, like a kid's toy, but it's fucking huge and I don't want it, so that could be a prize.
I thought you were talking about a bike, like it was a giant tiger and it was like...
No, it's just like a big stuffed tiger kind of thing. Someone could find that on their doorstep. But join us in that, and we'll see you next week.
What's up? I come from the land of down on I can't hear you. What was that? I can't hear you. I let it be like John Lennon, the anti-serum that you don't get for poisonous venom. Read the label carefully, I'm only here for the show. I love hip-hop too much to let you feed my ego. In the key of F-U-C-K-Y-O-U. I mean, why do I owe you if you're not helping me through? I mean, why do I owe you if you're obstructing my view? Success is not my castle, just a house that's brand new. You see, I irrigate the culture, give it shape like a sculpture. Still complicated, drop like I'm supposed to. B-L-I-T-Z like my DJ. Rock to the rhythm like you rock to what he plays.